The mountain wilderness breathed with a cold, merciless rhythm. Jagged peaks rose like stone sentinels against a slate-gray sky, and wind whipped through bare branches with razor-sharp precision. Here, survival was not a choice, but a constant battle. Max moved with the calculated grace of a predator who had survived countless harsh winters. His muscular frame bore the marks of previous encounters, a network of scars crisscrossing his weathered coat, each telling a story of survival. At 3 years old, he was a lone wolf-dog hybrid, hardened by the unforgiving landscape that had been his only home. The winter storm intensified, snow swirling in violent eddies that obscured vision and muted sound. Max's ears, alert and slightly torn from past fights, caught something unusual, a sound that didn't belong to the wilderness, a faint, rhythmic sound cutting through the howling wind, a cry. Not an animal's distress call, but something different, something vulnerable. Instinct warred within him. His survival training demanded he ignore potential distractions, conserve energy, avoid unnecessary risks. But something else, something deeper and more primal, pulled him toward the sound. He approached cautiously, moving between snow-laden evergreens, each step calculated and silent. The cry grew more distinct, a human sound, a baby's cry. In a small clearing near a rocky outcrop, partially sheltered by a fallen tree and a cluster of granite boulders, lay a human infant. Wrapped in a tattered, snow-covered blanket, the child was impossibly small against the vast, indifferent wilderness. Pale skin reddened by cold, tiny hands reaching desperately into the empty air. Max hesitated. Humans were not part of his world. They represented danger, unpredictability. His experiences had taught him to avoid them, to remain invisible. Yet the infant's vulnerability struck something unexpected within him, a recognition of helplessness that transcended species. The baby's cry was growing weaker, a terrifying sign in this environment where weakness meant death. Hypothermia would claim this small life within hours, if left exposed. Max's internal conflict was visceral. Every predatory instinct suggested leaving, preserving his own survival. But something else emerged, a nascent protective impulse that defied his usual survival calculus. Slowly he approached. His massive form cast a protective shadow over the infant. Warm breath, visible in the freezing air, created a small pocket of heat. The baby's cries softened, blue eyes fixing on Max with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. With surprising gentleness for a creature built for survival, Max used his body to shield the infant from the cutting wind. His thick fur created a barrier against the cold, his body heat a lifeline for the child who would otherwise perish within moments. The storm raged around them, but in this small space, a different kind of survival was taking root. Max began gathering nearby pine branches, moss, and dried grasses. With methodical precision, he constructed a makeshift shelter, creating a small den that would protect the infant from the worst of the winter's assault. He nudged the baby closer to the shelter's center, using his own body to provide additional warmth. The infant, remarkably, seemed to sense protection rather than threat. Small hands tentatively reached out, brushing against Max's weathered fur. In that moment, something shifted. Max was no longer just a predator. He had become a guardian. The wilderness watched, indifferent to this unlikely alliance. But here in this small shelter carved from snow and survival, a bond was forming. One that would challenge everything Max knew about survival, about connection, about the thin line between instinct and compassion. The storm continued, but they were together. Survivor and survivor. Predator and protector. Max and the child he would come to know as Emily. The first rays of dawn painted the rocky wilderness in hues of amber and gray, casting long shadows across the unforgiving terrain. Max's keen senses remained alert, every muscle coiled with protective tension as he cradled Emily close to his body. The infant's survival now intertwined with his own, a responsibility that transformed his once solitary existence. Hunger gnawed at Max's belly, a familiar sensation now complicated by the need to find sustenance for both himself and Emily. The wild dog's instincts, once purely self-preservational, now calculated with a new complexity. Each movement was measured, each decision weighed against the infant's vulnerability. Water became the first priority. Max carefully lifted Emily by the back of her makeshift blanket, holding her securely as he navigated the rocky terrain. His nose twitched, tracking the subtle moisture in the air. A small stream gurgled nearby, hidden between weathered boulders and sparse vegetation. Approaching the water source, Max set Emily down gently on a flat rock, ensuring she remained within arm's reach. He lapped at the water, then returned to the infant, using his wet muzzle to clean her face and hands. The gentle touch contradicted his previously aggressive nature, a testament to the profound transformation taking root within him. Survival demanded more than water. Food became a critical challenge. Max's hunting skills, once used solely for his own sustenance, now served a broader purpose. He scanned the surrounding wilderness, ears pricked, muscles tense. A small movement caught his attention. A rabbit darting between rocky outcroppings. The hunt became a delicate balance. Max needed to secure food quickly, but couldn't risk leaving Emily exposed. He moved with calculated precision, his body low to the ground, eyes never fully leaving the infant. The rabbit represented more than just prey, it was survival for both of them. A sudden rustle in the nearby brush interrupted Max's hunt. His hackles rose, a deep growl rumbling from his chest. A mountain lion, a predator that could easily threaten both him and Emily, emerged from the shadows. Max's transformation crystallized in that moment. No longer was he the lone survivor, he was a protector. The mountain lion's eyes locked onto Emily, a potential easy prey. Max positioned himself between the predator and the infant, his body a shield of muscle and determination. Gone was the hesitant, survival-focused creature from days before. This was a guardian, willing to fight against impossible odds. A thunderous clash erupted. Max's body moved with a combination of primal aggression and calculated protection. He dodged the mountain lion's initial attack, using the rocky terrain to his advantage. Each movement was precise, each action designed to draw the predator away from Emily. The fight was brutal but brief. Max's newfound purpose gave him strength beyond mere physical capability. With a final decisive lunge, he drove the mountain lion back, his growl a warning that echoed through the wilderness. Survival was no longer just about himself, it was about Emily. Returning to the infant, Max's breathing heavy, he found Emily unharmed. She looked up at him, her eyes wide with a mixture of trust and wonder. A soft whimper escaped her lips, not of fear, but of recognition. She knew, in her own infantile way, that Max was her protector. As the day progressed, Max's hunting skills evolved. He learned to move more quietly, to find food more efficiently, always keeping Emily's needs at the forefront. He discovered soft grasses to create a makeshift bed, positioned strategically in a small rocky alcove that offered protection from wind and potential threats. The bond between them grew stronger with each passing hour. Max's body became Emily's shelter, his instincts her navigation, his heart her home. The wilderness, once a place of solitary survival, transformed into a landscape of unexpected companionship. Night began to fall, and Max curled protectively around Emily. His body temperature regulated her own, his breathing a rhythmic lullaby that spoke of protection and promise. They were no longer just survivors. They were a unit, bound by something far more profound than mere survival. The wilderness watched, indifferent yet witnessing a remarkable transformation, of a wild dog discovering compassion and an abandoned infant finding an unlikely guardian. The wilderness had etched its harsh lessons into Max's weathered frame, but something fundamental had changed in the weeks since he'd found Emily. His once lean muscles now carried a different purpose, no longer solely dedicated to survival, but to protection. The rocky terrain challenged Max's every step. Emily, now slightly larger and more aware, nestled securely against his side, her tiny fingers occasionally gripping the coarse fur of his neck. Each movement was calculated, each pause deliberate. The wild dog had become more than a survivor. He had become a guardian. A distant rumble of thunder broke the wilderness silence. Max's ears pricked forward, sensing the approaching storm. His instincts, once purely self-preservation, now calculated the safety of the small human dependent on him. The rock formations around them offered potential shelter, but Max knew they would need something more secure. Memories flickered through his consciousness, fragmented images of his own abandonment, of lonely nights and desperate survival. Those memories no longer drove him with fear, but with a profound understanding of vulnerability. Emily represented something he had never known, a reason to protect beyond mere survival. The first drops of rain began to fall, heavy and unforgiving. Max carefully maneuvered, finding a small cave tucked between two massive boulder formations. The entrance was narrow, requiring careful navigation. He nudged Emily gently, ensuring she was secure before squeezing through the rocky opening. Inside, the cave offered protection from the raging storm. Water cascaded outside like liquid curtains, creating a thunderous symphony of wilderness fury. Max positioned himself protectively around Emily, his body creating a living shield against the cold and potential danger. Emily's breathing was steady, her small body radiating a warmth that seemed to penetrate Max's protective instincts. She was no longer just a survival challenge, she was family. The transformation was complete, though Max could not articulate it in human terms. His entire being now resonated with a single purpose: her safety. The storm raged on, but inside their rocky sanctuary, a different kind of connection was developing. Max's rough tongue occasionally brushed Emily's forehead, a gesture that was part cleaning, part comfort. Her tiny hand would sometimes reach out, touching his fur with a trust that transcended species. As night descended and the storm continued, Max reflected on the journey. His body bore the marks of wilderness survival, scars from territorial fights, patches of fur worn thin from harsh environments. But those physical markers now seemed secondary to the emotional transformation he had undergone. Survival was no longer about his individual existence. It was about ensuring Emily's protection, her growth, her potential. The wild dog who once roamed alone now understood companionship in its most primal and pure form. When the storm finally subsided, soft moonlight filtered through the cave's entrance. Max remained vigilant, his eyes scanning the external environment, ears alert to any potential threat. Emily slept peacefully, her breathing a rhythmic reminder of the fragile life he now protected. The wilderness, once a landscape of solitary survival, had become a canvas of unexpected connection. Max's transformation was not just about protecting Emily, it was about discovering a capacity for love that he never knew existed within him. As dawn's first light began to paint the rocky landscape, Max knew their journey was far from over. But for the first time, he was not alone, and neither was Emily. The wild dog and the abandoned infant slept, united by a bond that defied explanation, a testament to the extraordinary capacity for connection that exists in the most unexpected places. The first rays of morning light filtered through the dense forest canopy, casting long shadows across the rugged terrain where Max and Emily had survived for weeks. The wilderness rescue team moved carefully, their boots crunching against the rocky ground, scanning the landscape with practiced eyes and advanced tracking equipment. Max sensed them before they were visible. His ears pricked forward, a low rumble building in his throat, not quite a growl, but a warning. Emily, nestled close to him, stirred slightly, her small hand clutching the matted fur of his neck. The dog's body tensed, positioning himself protectively over the infant he had guarded with such fierce determination. The rescue team's lead tracker, a seasoned wilderness expert named Jake Rodriguez, was the first to spot them. At first glance, the scene looked dangerous, a wild dog hovering over a seemingly abandoned child. But something was different. Max wasn't threatening. His posture, while alert, was more protective than aggressive. "Easy now," Jake called softly to his team, raising a hand to stop their advance. "Something's not typical here." Emily whimpered softly, and Max's ears swiveled toward her, his eyes never leaving the approaching humans. His entire body language spoke of a complex mix of caution and protection. The rescue team could see the signs of their incredible journey. Max was thinner than a typical wild dog, with patches of fur worn thin, evidence of the challenges they had survived together. One of the team members, a wildlife veterinarian named Dr. Sarah Chen, stepped forward slowly. Her years of experience with animal behavior told her this was no ordinary encounter. "Look at how he's positioned," she whispered to Jake. "He's not trying to run, he's protecting her." Max remained absolutely still, a living shield for Emily. His eyes, intelligent and wary, tracked every movement of the humans. Years of survival had taught him to be cautious, but his recent experiences with Emily had transformed something fundamental in his understanding of protection. Jake approached carefully, speaking in soft, measured tones. "It's okay, boy. We're here to help." The rescue team's careful approach was a testament to their training. They recognized something extraordinary in the bond between the wild dog and the infant. Max's transformation from a lone survivor to a protective guardian was evident in every careful movement, every protective stance. As they drew closer, Emily made a small sound, part whimper, part recognition. Max's ears twitched, his attention split between the approaching humans and the child he had protected. The moment was charged with emotion, a delicate balance of trust and survival. Dr. Chen was the first to approach close enough to truly assess their condition. "She looks healthy," she said softly, examining Emily from a distance. "Remarkably so, considering the circumstances." The realization dawned on the rescue team. This was not a typical predator-prey scenario. This was something far more profound, a bond that defied natural expectations. Max's internal struggle was palpable. Every instinct that had kept him alive in the wilderness warred with the protective impulse he had developed for Emily. The humans represented both potential threat and potential salvation. As the rescue team prepared to intervene, a moment of profound connection passed between Max and Emily. Her small hand, which had been clutching his fur, seemed to understand something beyond words. Their journey together had been one of survival, of unexpected companionship. The separation was inevitable, but not without its emotional complexity. Max's eyes, filled with an almost human-like understanding, seemed to communicate a lifetime of experiences in a single glance. Jake approached with a blanket, carefully moving to lift Emily. Max's muscles tensed, but he didn't attack. Instead, he watched, a guardian making a final assessment, ensuring the safety of the one he had protected. As Emily was gently lifted, Max took a step back, not in fear, but in a calculated decision that spoke to his newfound understanding of protection. His journey from a lone, aggressive survivor to a compassionate guardian was complete. The wilderness around them seemed to hold its breath, a silent witness to an extraordinary tale of survival, protection, and the unexpected bonds that can form in the most challenging of circumstances.